Welcome back to Brighter Morning with Bhoe. When you hear that theme song, the Ganges and the Nile on that beautiful tenor pan, you know that it's Brighter Morning with Bhoe. And this is Multicultural Television and U97.5 Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio, and you are watching Brighter Morning with Bhoe. I hope those of you who heard the conversation just now with the goodly doctor from the University of the West Indies will understand how complex this issue of digitization and digitalization is, but will also understand that it can be done, has been done, and could be done. So within that context, we move on to another subject. We will be talking with Professor Anthony Gonzales. Is he on the line yet? All right, so we will be talking with him shortly. We won't keep him waiting. We will be talking to him shortly. But we have two videos about Haiti that we'd like to play. But just a second, I just want to share a couple things with you. Haiti is a CARICOM country, and it got its independence in 1804. It was the second country in this hemisphere of the Americas to get its independence. The first was the United States of America in 1776. And most of the Latin American countries got their independence in the late 19th century. So we basically are looking at a country that has been caught up in turmoil for a significant period of time, from 1804 to now. From time to time, we had serious problems, and within modern history, from about 1986, when Duvalier died, you've continued to have turmoil after that very repressive dictatorship under his Duvalier's control. Now, the situation in Haiti now is one in which people are waiting to see what is going to happen. The president has been assassinated. You have many contenders for power. You have an acting president in place who doesn't seem to have control of the place. And 2 days ago, a commission was established to find a solution to the Haitian crisis. This commission is made up of political representatives. It is made up of civil society. It is made up of private sector representatives. And 2 days ago, they were supposed to come up with an agreement in a day, but they were not able to do it. And yesterday they met again. I am not sure whether they have come up with a resolution yet. The objective is to sign an agreement among themselves which can lead to a Haitian-led and Haitian-developed solution. So we will see how that evolves. But I want to play two clips. I want to get Professor Anthony Gonzales on, and we'll talk for a couple of minutes. And then we will go straight into the clips. And then we will talk about the implications of those video clips that we use and about the situation in Haiti. And we will talk about other things as they come up. Professor Gonzales is a very, very knowledgeable person on international relations matters. He used to be the head of the Institute of International Relations. He is now retired, and he is familiar with the situation in Haiti, and he certainly is familiar with the situation in the Americas, that is to say the Western Hemisphere and the Caribbean and Latin America. So let's ask Professor Gonzales to come on, please. Hi, morning, Anthony.
Yes.
You don't mind if I call you Anthony?
No, not at all. Yes.
All right.
Good.
And this is Professor Gonzales to anybody who is watching. former head of the Institute of International Relations, and a very knowledgeable person on international relations, not only on the political side, but also on the economic or trade side. I should say economic and trade side. So we will talk to him a little bit, and we will get his initial reflections on Haiti, and then we will go to the video clips that we have. So could you talk a little bit, Professor Gonzales?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me, and a pleasant good morning to all your viewers. I would start by saying that the crisis in Haiti, that is to say, before the assassination of the president, Jovenel Moise, Haiti was already in a crisis. I think ever since the election in 2016, Martelly, who was the former president, had to leave office. You had a problem of legitimacy of the new president. I think the opposition parties rejected the election of Jovenel Moise, and they claimed that it was rigged, and they called for a new election, which meant that a new election had to be held. That did not take place until 2017, in about January or February 2017. Now, Moise was chosen by a very small percentage of the population that voted, I think about 21%. And even though he got about 51% of it, I think there was still a problem of legitimacy, but he was accepted. And when he assumed office, he took a series of measures which were not very favorable. He increased taxes. He had problems with certain sectors of the economy that were, let's say, traditionally in charge of certain things, like the electricity contracts. If you know Haiti, you know, for example, that there are certain sort of oligarchic interests, for example, that dominate certain sectors of the economy, banking and supermarkets and all these things and so forth. So he decided, in a sense, to do some changes there, and I think he met some resistance. But as time went on, a number of things started happening, probably the most important of which was the Supreme Court of Auditors that did an inquiry into the Petrocaribe affair and found that Moise was guilty of some kind of fraud, some kind of embezzlement. At least this was alleged. And they introduced that report into the Senate, and he caused quite a commotion. Moise rejected that report, and that triggered off a whole lot of demonstrations in the street, which has led up to the present situation. Now, things have, over the years, deteriorated to the point where it's very difficult to curb gang violence and the autonomous rise of a number of semi-units in Haiti, all vying in some way for influence and having a tremendous effect on the stability of the country. So that just before the assassination, there were a number of demonstrations, there were a number of actually killings and kidnappings. There was one in particular about a month ago, which was pretty catastrophic. About 15 people were killed in the Delmas 32 region. And that led to the killing of a policeman, I think a person with some rank in the police service. I'm saying this just because I think if it was just ordinary people, you wouldn't have had so much, it wouldn't have had been discussed as much as it has been. So that these events tended to trigger off action, and we saw external forces becoming very aware of the situation in Haiti because they realize now that, look, these gangs are taking over the country. You have one unit, for example, that have been uniting gangs and are now actually going into politics, becoming very active politically and claiming that they want to start a revolution in Haiti. So the situation was already very volatile. Now you have this assassination. And the assassination could come at a worse time when they were in the process of trying to re-elect a new prime minister. As a matter of fact, Moise did in fact elect a new prime minister who was about to take office, but he was not sworn in. And as a result, you have that kind of situation, that kind of vacuum where you have someone who's designated as the prime minister not taking office, and then Moise being assassinated, and the person who was supposed to leave office now assuming of the president, which is Claude Joseph. And then on top of it, that now the Senate coming into the picture and electing. When I say the Senate, I should say that there are only 10 members of the Senate out of the 30 members, simply because of the fact that elections was one of the factors that contributed to a lot of the instability, because Moise did not hold elections in 2019 for the House of Representatives, the Chamber of Deputies, which is more or less the lower house, so that there's no functioning House of Representatives. There's a small Senate, but the elections in 2019 were supposed to renew the 20 members that left. We have members, and those 10 members elected Joseph Lambert, who is one of the sort of the head of the Senate, but they elected him to be the president. Moise was assassinated. So you have more or less now like 3 contenders for president, and this is the context in which we find ourselves trying to see how we could navigate ourselves out of that turmoil. And when you referring to the commission, I think this is basically what the commission is attempting to do, which is to try to find some kind of transition government and sort of work the way towards towards the holding of elections, which would be probably some time. Well, Moise in fact set a date, which was in September this year. He had postponed it quite a number of times, and he wanted to have both a referendum as well as the elections, the parliamentary elections. So that this is the context in which I think we find ourselves today, and in which we are trying to find some kind of solution.
Okay. Thank you very much for that exposition, because you raised a number of issues that are so critical. First of all, the low election participation rate, about 20%. Secondly, the former president, who has since been assassinated, I think got out of the 20% votes that were tallied, I think he got less than half of the 20% that were actually tallied. And there were many charges of discrepancies between the declared amount of votes that he was supposed to have gotten and the actual number of votes that he would have gotten. And then there is the issue of the prime minister being named, designated prime minister being named but not installed. And then there are the other issues that you are raising, which are so explosive. The fact that you have gangland violence all over the country. You have a very fragmented country. You have a raging geopolitical interest in Haiti at this time and always, consistently. You have the political party, you have the political parties, multiplicity of them not being constantly in discord and certainly at odds with the government. You don't have an elected system in place because the elections have not been held. You have a handful of senators in the Senate. I mean, the place is a mess, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I think there's a recipe for total disintegration and turmoil. And I think we're very apprehensive as to what would result. And this is why the international community, the regional community is very much concerned. I think the first thing that one has to look at is basically how you could establish a transitional government that would find some kind of consensus among the prevailing political parties. And let me say that political parties in Haiti are not what we know of in our system. Political parties tend to be around a particular personality, and they don't seem to have life after
In
that
Haiti,
personality
isn't it?
goes.
It's all personality and personal cult in Haiti. It has always been like that, yeah?
This is
In the
correct.
political system, sure.
That's right. So there's no stability in the political arrangements. You would find there are several of them. For instance, Aristide, I thought, had quite a solid political party. He was one of the first who was able, in a way, to unite the country with the tongue. As you know, Haiti, there's that kind of division between urban and rural. And is trusted by the rural people who have always been very suspicious of the urban elites. But as history has shown, he was popularly elected. He actually, when he parted, there was quite a high turnout. But after he left, it seems that they have gone back to square one, and we are now seeing that in terms of the turnout. But the political parties themselves, they're all fragmented, and they all see agendas, and they all seem to serve particular interests in the private sector, and they're sort of vehicles for personal gain and so forth. So we have a serious problem with the political parties, but we have to work with what is there and try over time to build up political parties. So that's the context in which we're dealing with now in trying to get the situation to go forward. And I think all sort of external help, say the United States, the OAS, the Canada, the European Union, CARICOM, and so forth, they all seem to be converging around the idea that we need to get a dialogue going, and we need to have the parties choose a particular interim government. Now, recently, the Americans, of course, there's what you call the core group, consisting of Canada, European Union, the United States, and I think a representative of the United Nations, Germany, France, of course, and them operate side by side with the European Union. They did not include CARICOM, and I think there was some concern about snub in that. They came together with the political parties, and they, I think, had some kind of agreement that the head of the Senate, Joseph Lambert, would be president, and Prime Minister would be Ariel Henry. That is the guy who Moise had chosen before he died to be the Prime Minister. They agreed on that, but after the agreement, apparently Henry went ahead and began selecting his cabinet as Prime Minister, and he did not include members of the opposition political parties. He did not consult them, and he did not include any of their members. So they have now rejected that agreement and gone back to square one. So the consultation is still going on. I don't know if within a few days they may be able to arrive at some kind of consensus, but it would certainly be helpful if they can.
Yeah.
What role CARICOM can play?
Let's talk about CARICOM a little bit.
Yes.
Haiti is a member of CARICOM, and CARICOM is not involved in the core group. My understanding is that since 2019, CARICOM had in fact indicated to Haiti that it would like to play a role in the resolution of the crisis and to get the country on a path to an election-based footing. But Haiti had not responded either formally or informally. And my understanding as well is that Haiti instead invited the OAS, and the OAS sent a two-man mission, I think, to Haiti in June. We've had no reports on that particular situation yet. But, I mean, really you have a situation where CARICOM has made its good intentions known, waiting on a request by Haiti. And the problem is that Haiti has not responded and has responded elsewhere, and that has really left CARICOM, of which Haiti is a member, out in the cold. I mean, are you aware of this, and can you comment on this a little bit?
Yes, well, as you know, Haiti has, CARICOM has had a long history of involvement ever since the fall of Duvalier in 1986. CARICOM has been involved in elections, in terms of observing elections, and Haiti, as a member of CARICOM, has accepted the Charter of Civil Rights, which is more or less a commitment to democracy. And we have tried over the years to work with Haiti to build democratic institutions in Haiti. But building democratic institutions in Haiti is a very, very long-term task. It's not something that you can do overnight. The country is burdened with all sorts of obstacles, some of them due to natural disasters. And as you make one step forward, you find yourself going 2 steps back. So that, you know, while we made some progress up to about 2010, I think that with the earthquake, for example, which was followed by drought and then Hurricane Matthew, we have sort of gone 2 steps backward. So CARICOM has been involved historically, and Haiti has a commitment to CARICOM. So CARICOM is what I consider to be a legitimate stakeholder and a legitimate, for instance, I think the advantage CARICOM has is that it is a small area that doesn't have any pretensions to be a big power. It comes as a sort of honest broker. It is also a region with a long history of democratic government, so it has a certain kind of legitimacy. So I think CARICOM is something that one has to consideration. It has what you might call a kind of soft power, and Haiti has to live within the region. It has to live with this CARICOM member. Of course, CARICOM doesn't have what you might call the strong arm, the instruments of foreign policy as development assistance, as military power, trade, and so forth. But still, it has a certain kind of voice that should be heard. Now, over the years, the various governments have consulted CARICOM and has worked with CARICOM. They have invited CARICOM natural disasters. We have sent some of our military forces to help stabilize the country. So that I think it's something that the Haitian government should consider. Now, in the particular case that you make, and if you're suggesting that Joseph did not invite CARICOM, but instead chose to deal with, or rather Moise, I'm not clear basically which one of them you're referring to.
Moise. It was Moise.
But the point is that the situation is still evolving. No one as yet is clear as to how the opposition are going to come together in a way to try to choose a successor government. But I think CARICOM should be in the picture, and I don't know what is taking place behind the scenes. I can't comment, but I think it would not be wise for the Haitian government, whoever is there at this particular time, to go ahead by leaving out CARICOM. I don't think that would be a good move, because they have to live with CARICOM. They are part of CARICOM.
In 2019, Moise would have been in power, and the request was made.
In power, yes, okay.
And so
yes.
Basically he did not respond. We don't know whether it is because he did not perceive CARICOM to have the political muscle, or he didn't feel comfortable with CARICOM in the geopolitics or what. I mean, all we can do is speculate on that. But the point is that as a member of CARICOM, you would think that CARICOM would be involved in this, and that Haiti would be eager to have them as part of any resolution of the issue. Anyway, I want to play 2 clips now, Professor Gonzales, and we will look at the clips, and I will ask you to comment afterwards. The first clip is with the First Lady of Haiti, Mrs. Moise, coming back from Miami to Haiti. And the issue I want to raise there is, I mean, she's come back clearly for the funeral of her husband, and there's a lot of grief. We played a clip maybe last week where she talked in very emotional terms about what had happened. The second thing is that she is a witness to the murder of her husband, and therefore she is a person of great interest to anyone involved in the investigation. And the third issue is whether she has any political ambitions or role or strategic purpose in returning to Haiti. So that's one thing we will explore. And the second clip is about the evolution and developments in Haiti up to this point and the issues that have arisen up to this point of a geopolitical and internally political nature. Okay? So could we play the first clip of Mrs. Moise? And we'll go on to the second clip. There's a simple clip in which she met the Prime Minister, Claude Joseph, and she's coming into Haiti from Miami with a wound, obviously, because she's in a sling. And that simply reinforces the fact that she was a victim of a crime, an assassination, and it may have been an attempted assassination on her as well, or maybe just a signal being sent. And she has returned from the hospital, and she is now in Haiti being greeted by the Prime Minister. Okay, so let's look at the second clip.
A former Haitian Justice Ministry official may have ordered the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, a Colombian police chief said on Friday. Joseph Felix Barrio, who worked in Haiti's anti-corruption unit, allegedly ordered two former Colombian soldiers initially contacted for security services to kill Moïse instead, according to Colombian General Jorge Vargas. Authorities said one of the soldiers had been killed and Haiti police have captured the other. It was not immediately possible to reach Barrio for comment, and his whereabouts are unclear. Vargas said Barrio's order came 3 days before Moïse was found dead at his residence earlier this month, but did not provide any source or proof of this information. Meanwhile, Haiti's Prime Minister Claude Joseph on Friday called Moïse's assassination a big plot involving a lot of people and vowed to move the investigation forward. Haitian police have also identified former Haitian Senator John Joel Joseph as a suspect and arrested the head of palace security at Moïse's residence. The group of assassins included 2 Haitian Americans and 26 Colombians, among which 18 were captured, 3 were killed, and 5 are still on the run. Colombian President Iván Duque said many entered the country as bodyguards. Colombia's Vice President Lucia Ramirez said Friday the country will send a consular mission to Haiti to ensure the detained Colombians' rights are respected and to repatriate the remains of the deceased. Moïse's funeral is expected to be held next week.
Yes, well, welcome back again, and we have Professor Anthony Gonzales on interview and discussion here this morning. And we've been having a discussion. We showed the 2 clips. Now, when you look at that second clip, Professor Gonzales, I mean, that's a clip of real intrigue. Eh? I mean, you have the Colombian president and the generals of Colombia speaking on this matter. And this is not the first time. This must be the 3rd or 4th statement by the Colombians in the matter. Then, secondly, you have the link between the person who calls the assassination plot, who is Colombian, but who has links with the U.S. government, at least in the area of law enforcement, drug law enforcement. And you also have the allegations by the Haitian Prime Minister that this is a big plot involving a number of people. And then you have the allegation as well in the news against John Joel Joseph, who is in the Haitian Senate and who, of course, is seeing the power vacuum and wants to play a role in the process. And then we had that very strange story of an American-based Haitian doctor who had come to Haiti and was alleged to have been the replacement for the assassinated president. He has since denied that entirely, and somehow that story has been eclipsed and died. But what we are seeing in Haiti here is a hotbed of intrigue, both in terms of the internal politics of Haiti, which is almost unfathomable, and the geopolitics of the situation, which basically links law enforcement authorities, Colombian ex-soldiers, Colombia, the United States. I mean, it's a crazy situation. What do you make of this?
Yes, you're quite right. I think we're confronted with a web of intrigue that will take some time to untangle.
Unravel, yeah.
Unravel, sorry.
Unravel, I said.
Unravel, yes. Now, we have some indication of the action of some of the actors, but it is still not clear as to exactly where the mastermind is. I think they're still, in a way, searching to clearly identify who was the person or what was the agency behind all of this. The last thing I did floating around at them, I can't say with any precision whether one can point a finger in a particular direction. But it seems from all that I'm hearing that to some extent, and let us not forget that the Haitian government has been involved with Colombian mercenaries before. I think,
yes,
as a matter of fact, there was another contingent of Colombian country already seeing about something on behalf of the Haitian government.
Sure.
Whom I believe Moise, I think we have brought them there to see about something for him. So that we have to wait till the investigation goes in all directions and come up with some sort of clarity to be able to pronounce on this.
And
I was going to suggest that...
Just
yes.
to divert for a little bit, as a knowledgeable person on the history of the region, Simon Bolivar had in fact been associated with Haiti and was on Haiti's shores even as he led a Bolivarian revolution throughout Latin America. Isn't that true?
Oh yes, of course. I think earlier Haiti became independent around the time that the Venezuelan independence struggle started. And when Bolivar was defeated, I can't remember now exactly what battle that was, but when he was defeated and he retreated, he went to Haiti and he went to, I think, Pétion was the head of Haiti at the time. He went to Pétion and he asked support against Spain. And Haiti,
I should play the video.
Pétion is with ammunition and with a contingent of Haitian soldiers and so forth, which he took back into the next battle against that involvement of, and at that time, let's say, for example, there was no distinction between Venezuela and Colombia. It was one country, Grand Granada, and also, I believe, included Ecuador. So that Haiti and Colombia, Venezuela, that goes way back. So hence, these relations have continued over time, and we see a kind of interaction taking place in several areas. I even remember when President Manigat, who served a short time as president and who we know here, who was head of the Institute of International Relations, he had very strong relations with the Venezuelans. As a matter of fact, he worked there for a while, and he was very close to the Carlos Andres Perez government. So these connections have been there over time. We should not ignore them.
Yeah, but you were continuing. I interrupted you with the Simon Bolivar stuff, but you were commenting on the videos and trying to talk about trying to focus on the intrigue that is emerging.
Yes.
Both in local politics in Haiti and the geopolitics of the region.
Yes, as I was saying, it is difficult to point a finger at this point in time, but we are following the investment. From what I'm seeing up to now, and I'm saying this with some degree of caution, that it appears that Moise did interfere with the interests of some of the elites in Haiti. Some analysts tend to refer to the two major elites in Haiti, what you may call the political elite and the economic elite.
Business, yeah.
Even within there, among them. But some people tend to think that Moise, as a businessman, remember he was a banana exporter, and he was chosen by Martelly as the successor. Martelly, as a matter of fact, used to run a number of things through his companies. Moise, for example, got contracts from the Petro-Caribe Fund, and this was done by Martelly. And that didn't work well with some of the other Haitian elites that enjoyed these privileges before. So that a kind of antagonism may have grown there between Moise and some of the Haitian elites. And remember that to mount a campaign to assassinate the president, one has to really come with some good money. It takes, I think, somebody, if you have to employ 25 Colombia, and get a number of other logistical elements to put together a plan like that, you're talking about millions of dollars. You're talking about people who would have the means to really do that. And these are people who may have enjoyed certain kind of economic privileges in Haiti and who are seeing these privileges being eroded. So I tend to feel that to some extent the answer may be somewhere there, but I am not sure, and I don't want to put my head on a block. You're quite right when you say that there are links in all that directions. What sort of links some of these people had with the American government or with other governments in the region, we don't know, or with existing politicians. All of these are not yet clear. Some people say, well, some of the guys work for the American government, and the American government would probably have been informed, probably would have interest. Maybe they felt that Moise was not capable of stabilizing the country, and he was creating a lot of turmoil in terms of not what's taking place on the street. Some have also accused him of being in alliance with some of these gang leaders. I think that was one accusation that was made against him. And many people fear that the politics has descended into chaos largely because of that kind of attitude towards politics. Of course, he for another term in office, and that one needed to stop him. So there are several motives that people have. Some are political, some are economic, and it is determined exactly how this would pan out. Now, some of the people on the inside, what we call the palace school kind of thing. For example, some people tend to say that the current president himself had some kind of interest because he felt that he was being removed. Moise was removing him and replacing him by Ariel Henry, and he struck back, and this was his way of trying to deal with accusation. I don't know what truth there is to that. But there are several motives hanging around. And remember as well too that Martelly started to revive the army which Aristide had destroyed. And when Moise came, Moise continued along. Those who are familiar with the history of Haiti would know that the army used to reign supreme in Haiti right up to the time of Aristide. Aristide came after he was overthrown by the army, and then the Americans came in 1994. When he came back, he disbanded the army. And Haiti has been without an army, and they have not been able to provide the kind of stability and security by not having an army. And this is why they had to go to the UN to get a UN force to come in there and stay in Haiti until 2017 was the disaster surrounding the cholera affair and all the sexual abuse by the UN personnel and so forth. That was disbanded. But Haiti has been left in a very precarious situation. It doesn't have a proper army. It doesn't have a proper police service. And I was just trying in a way to see what links there may be between those two institutions, very important in the Haitian context, and whether to some extent there was some kind of rivalry taking place between them. I think the Haitian police could have seen the army coming back in some way. They have been revived. I don't know how many people now within the army, but Moise was setting about to rebuild it, following along what Martelly had done. And that may have caused some kind of unease by the Haitian police, who had been sort of in control of things up to that point in time. So there's again to look in that direction. I'm not saying there's any kind of strong evidence to support that, but all I'm suggesting that we have to take into account all these various factors.
No, you're speculating on the scenario that is emerging there, and it's very, very complex. I think most people must understand that there is a political elite in Haiti, a very strong one, perpetually fighting for power, what you might call a political oligarchy. There is also a strong private sector with big interests, a narrow band of people, but I mean, they are also an economic and business oligarchy in the country, and there is always collaboration between the political and economic oligarchy in the country. I think people need to understand that in Haiti you have a lot of civil society organizations and civil society capacity, but they do not have the kind of power that one would expect perhaps in a more democratic society. And you have the peasantry and you have the urban population, and basically the twain do not meet. There's a lot of disconnect between urban Port-au-Prince and Haiti and the rural population, which is really a peasantry. And they are totally divorced from everything in Haiti. And then you have all of these power struggles, which in the end mean nothing to these people. You know, they don't even participate in the elections. The only time you had some increased participation was during the time of Aristide, who was a Catholic priest who was able to bridge the gap between Catholicism on the one hand and the ordinary people whose religion is totally alien to that and connected with things like the indigenous voodoo and so on. And he was able to make some connection with them, and we had greater participation. So Haiti continues as a mess with a serious constitutional problem, because any solution that they find now outside of immediate election is going to be an extra constitutional solution. And it's going to be a decision of players to work outside of the Constitution to establish constitutional order, electoral system that whose results can be trusted, and basically in the interim to strengthen the institutions in Haiti, which have all virtually collapsed, including the election system. No, We just have a minute or so, and I'll have you comment on that, and then we'll close, Professor.
Yes, I think you're quite right. Yes, there's a constitutional crisis in the sense that many people have suggested that the constitution is not working. There's electing a prime minister who sees themselves as a future president, and that creates conflict, continuous conflict between the prime minister and the president. So the new constitution, in a way, proposes to eliminate that, to have a vice president himself. The new constitution also proposes to extend the presidency to 2 terms, something which a lot of the opposition is concerned about. It's 1 term in the current constitution. I think many people feel that that is not working, and you need to give the president a 2nd term in office. Some people see that as Moise trying to voice himself on the public for a 2nd term, although the proposal says that you can run for president under any new constitution. The existing president cannot run again, so that may not be correct. Right. And then you have the question of the unicameral legislature, which is to say you get rid of the Senate and you have only one.
Professor Gonzales, we're going to have to call it a day at this point. I want to thank you very much. You spent a good deal of time with me. And
yes, you're welcome.
That you elicited a number of areas that might have, been nebulous and confusing in people's mind, and I'm grateful for that. And on another occasion, we'll have you on other issues, perhaps having to do with Venezuela or the hemisphere or the situation in Latin America, because a lot of things are unfolding here. And we'll keep the dialogue going, okay? Thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Yes. Have a good day.
Welcome. Trinidad and Tobago is going to open up today a little bit, okay? You have curbside food. You have the street vendors coming out. And on a lighter note, we've had a heavy conversation about digitization, digitalization, cybersecurity, and we've had a big, heavy discussion on the power struggle in Haiti. Can we play this short clip? And this is played on a lighter note. It really celebrates doubles.
When Monday 19th reach, everybody go be singing.
Mama, we reach. Oh God, look at people in army. Oh my God, I get frightened. The doubles man no star. Just put some China in me barra. Just put some China in me barra. Just put some China in me barra. Put some China in me barra. Shadow many mashing up the blade. You come by mashing up the blade. And them are mashing up the blade. Put China in me barra. Oh my God. Pepper want the bomb, pepper want the bomb, pepper want the bomb. Pepper want the bomb, pepper want the bomb, pepper want the bomb. Pepper want the bomb, pepper want the bomb, pepper want the bomb. Sing a verse. All I can think here is they had no pie, they had doubles. Give me Kuchela, give me Slide Pepper and a solo, and the green things are. We buy the doubles, guys.